Hi, it's Travis White with the Persuasive Communication Tip of the Week. Let's say you're walking down the street in Manhattan one day. Lots of noise, lots of people, construction, traffic, all kinds of things going on. And you see a man lying on the sidewalk, apparently unconscious. What do? If you're like a lot of people, you'll look at other people to see what they're doing, and you'll read social cues from them. This is what's known as an uncertain situation. You're not sure what you should do, so you look to others and you read what they do. So you may be a stranger to Manhattan. You say, well, I'm looking at all these other Manhattanites and they don't seem to be reacting with alarm or emergency. Perhaps I shouldn't either. Well, the trouble is they're also looking at you. And because you're not reacting with alarm, they're saying, well, I'm looking at other people and they're not reacting with alarm. Therefore, maybe I shouldn't either. And so maybe that poor man lies there on the sidewalk for a while. Now, as it happens, if you were out walking by yourself in a quiet neighborhood, no one else around, and you saw a man lying on the sidewalk, almost certainly you would go to that man and render aid. Perhaps that's first aid, perhaps that's calling an ambulance. So the behavior is not up to you, it's the behavior of you as an individual when you're alone versus your behavior in a group. And group behavior, group activity, it's what Robert Cialdini calls social proof. We look to others to understand how we should behave. And that's an important concept in persuasive communication. And it's important to understand that our communication is not only verbal communication, it is group communication. And this is related to some research done by the United States Air Force after World War II. During the war, a number of flyers were shot down. They parachuted to safety, but they were a long way from home and they were a long way from safe recovery, from rescue. And so the Air Force studied after the war what were the factors associated with survival, with success and finding their way home. And one of the things that stood out was that individuals had a much higher chance of survival than groups. That individuals tended to make conservative decisions and groups tended to make more risky decisions. And it's what the Air Force called the risky shift, the move toward riskier behaviors. And it works something like this. You're in a group and you say, I'm not sure what we should do. There's uncertainty here. I'm not sure how we should behave. I'm not sure what we should do. I'm not sure how we can organize ourselves to survive. Joe says something and you think, well, I'm not sure if that's the right thing or not, but Joe seems fairly certain, so I'll go with Joe. I'll go with what Joe seems to think is the right thing to do. So we cede some of our responsibility. It's not only uncertainty, but it's shared responsibility. And we cede some of our responsibility to the group, and the group cedes it to us. And I may say something and other people will think exactly the same thing. I'm not sure what the right thing to do is. I'm not sure if Travis knows what he's talking about, but he seems to be fairly confident, so we'll go with what he's suggesting. And that group then would tend toward making riskier decisions and acting in riskier ways. The individual, on the other hand, well, there's nobody else to blame. The individual would take a more conservative approach and make more conservative decisions. And according to the Air Force research, that led to more successful outcomes. So as you think about persuasive communication, think about group behavior. And I've seen this happen in our industry. We often form temporary groups, and those groups might come together just to do a demonstration, might come together to do an installation or an implementation, and then disperse. The group has some uncertainty in it, what's the best way to do a demonstration, and has some shared responsibility. So I don't do demonstrations very often, but oftentimes I give presentations when a demonstration is also being done. And so I participate in some of the planning, and sometimes I'll think, well, that's not the way I would do it, but these guys do demonstrations all the time, so they must know what they're doing. And I realized that in fact, I was moving toward that risky shift that we see in group behavior. And so I spoke up and I said, you know, I'm not sure that I agree with your recommendation. And sometimes that changed the behavior of the group. Sometimes they had a logical explanation. When they explained it to me, it made perfect sense, and it didn't change the behavior of the group, but it clarified the behavior and it clarified why we were doing what we were doing. So I encourage you, as you think about the groups that you participate in, is there that risky shift? Are we ceding responsibility to this generalized shared responsibility model that sometimes happens in a group? If that happens to you, if you're in a group where you see that, where you observe that occurring, then I would encourage you to speak up, because that's the way you take the more conservative decision, the decisions that are more often associated with success in any endeavor. So be careful of group behavior. Be aware that group behavior often tends toward riskier behavior than individual behavior, and be aware that the way you present yourself and the way you present your ideas will help the group clarify what they're doing and why they're doing it. And oh, by the way, if you're ever walking down the street in Manhattan and you see a guy stretched out unconscious, go give him some help. He needs it. That's the Persuasive Communication Tip of the Week. See you again next week.